Got fired for unintentionally mocking the owner's disabled daughter's drawing at a work retreat, and now she's sending me friend requests. This all went down last Friday, and ever since, I've been drowning my sorrows and dreading the fact that I'm going to have to start looking for a new job. Explaining why I got fired from my old one is going to be fun, let me tell you. I'm writing this out in a desperate attempt to get things straight in my head, because right now, everything feels like a swirling mess. I've been with the company for only 3 months, so I was still on orientation. My job was in sales and advertising. As the new guy, they handed me existing accounts to manage. Most of my work was providing decent customer service and trying to convince these clients to throw a bit more money at their advertising. The big, creative campaigns were never left for me. If accounts wanted something flashy or different, they got bumped up the chain to a senior account manager in our advertising team. Eventually, I hope to get to that level. For now, it was all about proving that I could keep existing clients happy and squeeze out a bit more revenue. Everything was clicking along fine until last week, when our quarterly retreat rolled around. Since our office was the main regional hub, all the staff from satellite locations gathered here for the event. The company owner hardly ever visited. He'd been off overseeing the setup of a new satellite branch for the last year, or so my coworkers said. But for the retreat, he was there, along with his disabled daughter, Amy. Not her real name, but I'll keep it private. One coworker mentioned Amy worked in one of the satellite offices, and told me I wouldn't deal with her much, but that I should be nice. As if that was news, I'm polite to everyone. Always have been. Now, I don't know much about Amy's exact disability, but she came across as having childlike mannerisms and some trouble expressing herself. Motor skills seemed to be a challenge for her, too. The only direct interaction I had with her before everything fell apart was at the coffee station. She was struggling, a bit awkwardly, to get sugar and a lid onto her coffee. I offered to help, and she accepted gratefully. As I fixed her cup, she loudly declared she hated coffee, but her dad made her drink it so she could be, again, in a big voice, always alert. I just smiled, agreed that alertness was important, and handed her the cup. She thanked me and returned to her dad's office, where she spent most of the day. I honestly felt like a good Samaritan. Most of the retreat was team building. Prior to the infamous incident, Amy only joined in for a puzzle race, a contest where groups finish puzzles without seeing the final image. She wasn't in my group, and we barely crossed paths. Neither of our teams won, anyway. Then came the main event, the one everyone hyped up as the highlight of the retreat. We all got a list of potential clients, and as a group, picked 3 to develop pitches for. Anything was fair game: pictures, slogans, jingles, you name it. Individually, we'd each put together something, then polish it as a group in time for the big presentation session. It was a big deal. Rumor had it the boss sometimes favored a creative pitch so much he'd hand the account over, so people got competitive. For my part, I whipped up a silly jingle, rhymes and all, recorded myself singing it, and then took in my group's suggestions to refine it. I re-recorded the final cut for submission, then helped the rest of my team prep their ideas. After everyone turned everything in, we all crowded into the big conference room to critique one another's work. The owner presented each one by type, projected pictures, storyboards, or audio. We'd all comment, good or bad, and sometimes burst into laughter over an especially bad entry. The senior account managers, I noticed, didn't really put much effort into theirs. But up to that point, nobody was offended or upset, just a mix of compliments and jokes. When my jingle came up, it got a ton of comments, not all positive, but I took it with a grin, because taking criticism is part of the gig. After that, I felt more comfortable giving feedback to others. I chipped in with some honest thoughts here and there, and we all got a laugh out of a couple of the more ridiculous submissions. And then, disaster. The owner threw up another submission for the same client I'd done. It was a crude drawing, like, really rough. I couldn't resist and cracked, well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw it? And I laughed, right into a wall of stunned silence. Everyone just stared at me. The air in the room changed instantly. Before, plenty of jokes were flying and everyone had been laughing. But now people were looking at me like I'd committed a crime. The owner abruptly said, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, keep it to yourself, maybe? My boss quickly came down to my seat and hissed that I needed to go to my desk. Now, as I gathered my things, I realized the owner's daughter, Amy, was sitting there, red-faced, on the verge of tears. That was the end of the team building. For me, anyway. Sitting at my desk, it hit me like a punch, that drawing must have been Amy's. I had no idea. No names had been mentioned with any of the submissions until after we'd started the feedback. Maybe I should have known, but up until then, everyone had been joking, laughing. Someone else's worst drawing even got laughed at with no issues. But this time, it wasn't just anybody. I felt awful. As soon as the whole thing concluded, I sought out my boss to apologize. He told me to wait in his office. Long story short, he fired me. He said I wasn't a good fit for the company and, since I was still on orientation, it'd be best to let me go now. He never specifically said it was because of the comment about Amy's drawing, but it's obvious. That had been the only trouble I'd run into. Until then, all my reviews were golden. I barely had time to process any of it before security was called. They arrived promptly, stood there as I collected my things, and walked me right out. About an hour later, a teammate called to invite me for a drink, one last time, since they all felt bad they hadn't warned me. I wasn't sure I was up for it, but with a possible job search looming, I figured it couldn't hurt to maintain a few good references, especially since there's zero chance of getting one from my boss or the owner. After everything that happened, I learned a lot more about the company and the people I worked with. My team explained to me that Amy attends all of these retreats, and every single time, she creates some kind of crude drawing like the one that got me in trouble. Apparently, everyone just knows to say nice things about her artwork, nod along, and then swiftly move on. One of my teammates even mentioned that after seeing one of her drawings, you start to know exactly what to expect in the future. But I was completely clueless. No one warned me. The more I thought about it, the more upset I got. It stung that this was some open secret, and everyone was in on it except for me. But what could I do? I had already made a mistake, and it cost me my job. Then my coworkers started telling me more about Amy. Evidently, she works at one of the satellite offices, but from what they told me, she doesn't actually do anything substantial. The management there tries to come up with little tasks for her, just so she stays occupied. If she gets bored, she gets upset. They said it's like the staff there act as her babysitters, just to make sure she doesn't pester her dad all day while he's at work. And after he moved on to start another satellite office elsewhere, Amy stayed behind because she wanted to be close to her friends at that office. It got even stranger. My team told me that Amy's dad, the man who owns the company, would pressure some of the single guys to take her out on dates. I couldn't believe it. That sounded way over the line, certainly something HR should have handled, but of course, he owns the place. They also said Amy is obsessed with getting a boyfriend and talks constantly about wanting to get married. According to them, she doesn't really grasp how relationships or marriage work and that it's probably her dad who planted the idea in her head. One of my teammates even tried to joke about it, saying, "Hey, it's not a bad deal. Whoever marries her gets to inherit the company one day, since she's the only child." I wasn't in the mood for jokes anymore, not after being fired for one myself, so I just told them I needed to go. There was one small upside. My former teammates said they would be happy to provide me with a reference, especially since they felt guilty for not warning me about the whole Amy situation in the first place. And then, as if I needed another twist, Amy sent me a Facebook friend request over the weekend. I haven't accepted it yet. I already hurt her feelings and lost my job because of it. There's a part of me that wants to accept her request, apologize directly, and then block her, but, honestly, I don't even know if I'm ready to do that. For now, I'm going to take a few days to collect myself and update my resume. After thinking it over, reading some messages from friends, and talking things out with a close confidant, I made up my mind. I'm going to accept Amy's friend request. Update 1. If you saw my first story, you know how I lost my job after making a joke that accidentally targeted the company owner's disabled daughter, Amy. During the final team building event of the day, everyone was pitching ideas for a new account, everything from jingles, my pitch, storyboards, slogans, to crude drawings. Senior account managers were half-heartedly participating, prompting plenty of jokes, and the room was pretty rowdy with laughter. People made some cracks about my jingle, and basking in the group's energy, I let myself get a bit cocky. When a crude drawing came up for the same account I'd just done my jingle for, I blurted out, "Well, at least my jingle was better than that. Did a 3-year-old draw it?" Instantly, the entire room went silent. The owner glared at me, his face going red. I had absolutely no clue that Amy, the owner's daughter, regularly submits hand-drawn pieces to these sessions. I wish someone had clued me in. Amy's drawings are a huge accomplishment for her, considering her disabilities, and everyone knows to say something complimentary before moving on. As the new guy, that detail had completely escaped me, and my ignorance, paired with poor judgment, cost me my job on the spot. That night, devastated, I met up with my team at a bar to begin drowning my sorrows. While I sat there, replaying the day in my head, a Facebook friend request popped up, from Amy herself. Now, I had to decide what to do. I knew deep down, especially after a round, or 6, with Dave, my best friend since childhood, that simply sitting with this guilt would eat away at me. Dave, as expected, told me straight, accept the friend request, apologize, and clear your conscience. Man, I'm getting us another round of shots. He's known me pretty much my whole life, and he was right. I realized I needed to do something, if only for closure. So, I listened. I accepted Amy's request and sent her a message. I admitted right away that my joke was out of line, unprofessional, and I was truly sorry. I waited a while, feeling jumpy, until finally she replied. Amy actually thanked me for apologizing, but said she'd reached out because she wanted to apologize to me, since I lost my job over it. I told her she didn't owe me a thing, and after a long pause, she asked if she could send me something she'd written and saved. I said of course. She pasted a message, which was clearly generic but heartfelt, something she'd composed in advance. To paraphrase, "Hi, my name is Amy. Please forgive me if I'm slow to respond to you. I suffered a brain injury when I was a little girl and it takes me a while to type things out." It went on, explaining her situation, but that was the key part. I let her know she could take all the time she wanted. Messages went back and forth, and before I knew it, we'd been chatting until almost 3 a.m. No, we didn't start dating, and I'm not plotting to marry Amy for vengeful inheritance. Pretty quickly, I realized I just wanted to be her friend, not out of guilt or pity, but because she seemed genuinely good-hearted. And everyone can always use more good-hearted friends. We talked a lot about her life. She opened up about her accident. When she was a kid, she and her mom got hit by a drunk driver while driving home from a birthday party. She survived with a severe brain injury that makes everyday things, even speaking or getting dressed, a struggle. Her mom didn't make it. The injury damaged Amy's motor skills, so people often assume she's mentally challenged, even though she isn't. She ended up in special ed, but worked hard to graduate high school. She even aspired to go to college, but her father discouraged her. Amy confessed how tough it has been for her to connect with people, since her speech is slow and laborious, and usually by the time she's able to answer, the conversation is over. She can type, but that's slow too, and most people don't want to wait around for her to finish typing in person. When she's not at work, she sometimes pretends to be mute, carrying a tablet, because it's just easier. We circled back eventually to my blunder with the drawing. It turned out she wasn't personally offended, having figured out pretty quickly that I genuinely didn't know the story behind the crude artwork. What really upset her was knowing that chaos would erupt and she wouldn't be able to chime in fast enough to explain. When she learned I'd been fired, she tried to talk to her dad, but he wouldn't listen. He just brushed her off. Amy's fully aware that many in the company only act nice to her because she's the boss's daughter, but at the satellite office where she's based, there are a few people who actually get what her life is like. She wishes she could contribute more, but she does her best with busy work when it's available. It might take her all day to do what others finish in an hour, but it beats being bored. She knows her dad feels burdened by her, and that pain cuts deep, but she loves him all the same and just wants to be someone he could be proud of. She's tried expressing herself via email and text, but he never really responds in writing. He just answers verbally when he sees her, which leaves her struggling to keep up and only managing simple one-word replies. Before we ended our late-night chat, she thanked me one more time for helping her with her coffee. She told me that when she was younger, she hated when people tried to help, but now she's realized how rare it is to meet someone patient enough to genuinely lend a hand instead of just standing by, pretending. As we wrapped up, it struck me how much I'd assumed about her before actually talking with her. It was a long night, and I could see why most never take the time to get to know her. Her messages were slow and riddled with typos, but for the first time, I really saw the actual person behind the crude drawing. When Amy and I spoke, I realized I'd misunderstood something significant about her. I had initially described her as having childlike mannerisms, but the truth was more nuanced. When Amy tries to force words quickly or when she emphasizes something, her voice gets really loud. The result is that she sometimes comes across sounding like an excited toddler rather than an adult just trying to have a normal conversation. Last night, our conversation ended on a good note. We agreed we'd talk again soon. Before we hung up, Amy asked if I'd seen the first episode of House of the Dragon. I told her yes, I had. She suggested that after she watches it, we could talk about it together. I honestly loved that idea, so I told her I'd really enjoy it. And that's how things stand for now. For those who suspected I'd sneakily try to take over her dad's company, rest assured, that's not happening. Talking to Amy actually made me feel so much better about everything. Now, I'm still not entirely sure how I'll deal with having been fired the next time I'm at a job interview, but some friends suggested I just leave that gap on my resume. That might actually work, so I'm seriously considering it. I don't know if there will be any further updates. Things seem to have found a happier resolution than I imagined was possible after everything that happened the first time. And as a little aside, Amy watched House of the Dragon and loved it. She's genuinely cool, and I think I could genuinely see myself being friends with her. It still breaks my heart when I think about how her dad treats her. He doesn't seem to care to listen to, understand, or even get to know his own daughter. The way he disrespects and belittles Amy is just unbelievable. I mean, how dare he stop her from going to college? It's as though he's discriminating against his own child because of her disability. That makes me feel both incredibly sad and incredibly angry. Update 2. I wasn't planning on seeing Amy in person. We'd been messaging back and forth late at night, about dragons, about dumb memes, about the best way to reheat fries without turning them into cardboard, and it felt like that was enough. Then she asked me a question that made me stop scrolling and actually think, can you show me how to make my phone type when I talk? She said people kept telling her to just say it faster, which is like telling a sprinter to just grow wings. I tried to explain dictation over Messenger, but we hit the limits of screenshots pretty quickly. She suggested meeting at the public library near her office, bright, crowded, 10-minute time limit in one of those little side rooms with the glass walls. I told myself I'd go for an hour, tops, set up her phone, say sorry again in person, and be done. She was waiting in the lobby with the tea already in a cardboard tray for me. She remembered our coffee station conversation and smirked, always alert, like an inside joke she'd decided was ours. I helped her carry everything to the study room and pulled out my phone to mirror the menus. It took all of 5 minutes to turn on voice control and get the accessibility settings dialed in. The first time she saw her voice become a full paragraph on the screen, punctuated, spaced out, not rushed, not chopped up by someone else's impatience, she covered her mouth and just stared at it. I asked if it was okay to watch. She nodded, cleared her throat, and started dictating an email. Slowly. Carefully. The screen caught every word. "Hi Dad. I need to tell you something important. Please read the whole thing before you answer me." She kept going. She told him she wanted to try one class at the community college 3 blocks from the satellite office. Just one. She'd found a disability services office online. She attached the link. She explained exactly what support she'd need. She told him she wanted to make her own friends and not just be the person the office kept busy. She asked him to reply in writing so she could keep up. She said she'd found a speech-to-text tool and could use it for emails, and she hoped he'd try it too, but if not, a regular email would be fine. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "Does this sound like me? The inside me?" I told her it sounded exactly like her. She copied and pasted, added her aunt's email as a CC, her mom's sister, someone she said actually responds, took a deep breath, and hit send. We didn't even finish our teas before my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. I did. "Is this the guy who mocked my daughter?" The voice was low and calm in the way that makes your spine go cold. "Yes," I said. I already apologized to her. She accepted. You will not contact her again," he said. "You will not meet with her, you will not message her, you will not involve yourself with my family. You will not use her to get to me." Do I make myself clear? My mouth went dry. I told him that Amy had asked to meet me and that all I'd done was help her turn on a feature that lets her communicate more clearly. I told him I wasn't trying to get to him or anything from him. I told him I was sorry he found out this way, because I would have preferred to avoid any confusion. He hung up without another word. 10 minutes later, an email from HR landed in my inbox with a subject line that might as well have been stamped in red ink: separation agreement. It offered a small severance I didn't expect and 3 pages of non-disparagement, a promise to never contact any employee, a clause about not discussing internal processes, the works. I called Dave, who put me in touch with his cousin, an actual lawyer, not just a guy who looks like one when he wears a blazer to a wedding. She told me to breathe, read every line twice, and ask for a neutral reference letter on company letterhead in exchange for signing, plus a tweak to the no contact clause so I could at least stay friends with people who wanted to, in their personal time, be human beings. She said if they were sending this now, it wasn't about me suing, they were spooked about optics. While all of that was spinning, Amy messaged me, he answered me. He wrote back. She sent a screenshot. It wasn't warm. It wasn't rude either. He said he'd think about it. He said he was busy and those programs were for other people, but that he'd schedule a time to talk it through properly. It was the first time, she said, that he'd ever responded to one of her long emails with something longer than okay. She booked an intake appointment with the disability office that afternoon. She forwarded me the confirmation like it was a photo of a sunrise. I decided not to go with her. It didn't feel like it should be my face in that office with her, not on day 2 of knowing each other outside of Messenger. I helped her make a list of questions instead: note takers, recording lectures, flexible deadlines, how to handle attendance if buses were delayed or her body didn't cooperate some mornings. She sent me a voice note from a park bench after the appointment, words coming out stiff and careful through the new app, but clear as day. I did good. Then she laughed, this abrupt, bright sound I'd never heard from her in person because laughter doesn't fit neatly inside polite office space, and I realized I had been bracing for everything to go wrong. The story doesn't turn into a rom-com or a Hallmark movie there. The next morning, I got another call, HR again, this time asking if I could come by to collect a few personal items that were discovered in your desk and sign. I told them to place anything in a box and leave it at security. I emailed back to their agreement with the edits the lawyer cousin suggested, kept it dry and boring, and asked for the neutral reference letter. No threats, no drama. They wrote back within an hour saying they'd agreed to the reference and the edit, but the severance would be reduced. I told them to keep the money and send the letter. They did. I printed it and put it in a drawer like a talisman. On my way back from that errand, the universe threw in something petty and cruel just to make sure I didn't get too comfortable. A coworker sent me a video of an internal presentation our team had used to pitch one of those retreat clients. "You'll love this," he wrote. The audio kicked in, and there it was, my jingle. Same rhyme scheme, same dumb pun, even the mistake I'd left in the second verse when I got too cute with alliteration. A different name on the slide as creative, a senior manager's. I watched it twice, then a third time because I didn't trust my own ears. I wanted to get angry. I couldn't. I'd made it on company time for a company event, the company owns it. It still stung to see my work do its job for someone else's portfolio while I was reorganizing my sock drawer to feel in control of something. I closed the video and went back to editing my resume into a version of the truth that would make sense on a form. 2 days later, Amy called me, actually called, with the text-to-speech thing turned off, because she said she wanted me to hear her the way the college counselor had heard her. Her words still came out slow and careful and angled, but there was this new steadiness underneath them. She told me she'd registered for one class. Introduction to Digital Media, Monday and Wednesday mornings. She told me she'd already set up a campus email. She told me her dad had asked to meet at a diner on Sunday to talk in person. She said she was nervous and excited and using the word "and" on purpose because both could be true at once. I asked if she wanted me to roleplay the conversation with her. She said yes. We practiced not letting the conversation get hijacked. She practiced saying, "Please read what I wrote," when he started answering questions she hadn't asked. She practiced being quiet and letting silence sit there until he filled it with an actual response instead of a vague promise. She practiced asking, "What do you need from me to feel comfortable with this?" Sunday morning, I got a text from her aunt from an unknown number. "You don't know me. I'm with Amy. She asked me to send you this." A photo slid in. Amy in a diner booth with a purple binder on the table, her hair tucked behind one ear, her dad across from her with his hands squeezed together so tight his knuckles were white. No smiles. No tears. Just two people trying and a binder between them full of printouts and a highlighter uncapped. An hour later, another photo. This time, the binder was open and there were two signatures on a form from the college disability office. One tiny, cramped, one big and loopy like someone trying to sign their way out of a corner. Then came a message from Amy herself, 3 words that made me sit down on my kitchen floor and breathe for a minute. He signed it. I wish I could end on that triumph and roll credits, but life has B-sides. The same afternoon, I finally had a decent interview. A smaller agency, different vertical, but enough overlap to make me feel useful. The hiring manager asked me, straight up, why I left my last job after 3 months. I told him the cleaned up version: wrong fit culturally, unexpected circumstances. He looked at me for a long second, hands folded, then said he used to work under my old owner a lifetime ago and that he'd heard about the retreat. My stomach dropped. He shrugged like I'd worried over nothing and said, "We all make a joke that dies in a room. The question is what you do after the room goes quiet." I told him I'd apologized and tried to fix what I could. He nodded and said the team would get back to me within the week. Tonight, Amy sent me a 10-second voice note where she tried to imitate a deep, movie trailer narrator, in a world where the coffee is gross. One woman chooses tea. Then she cracked herself up. I sent back a drumroll on my counter with a spoon like an idiot. She sent me a photo of her class schedule printed out and tacked above her desk. I don't know where any of this is going. I don't know if I'm getting that job. I do know that in a glass-walled study room in a library, a person I barely knew opened her mouth and finally got to be heard the way she hears herself. If my part in all of this is to be the guy who turned on a setting and then learned to get out of the way, I can live with that. Update 3. The job offer came while I was standing in the freezer with a bag of peas thawing against my wrist because the store had the AC cranked to Arctic. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder, nodded at an old guy squinting at ice cream labels like they were Sudoku, and heard, "We'd like to bring you on." No polite circling. No HR preamble. Just that. I swallowed, said yes, and then, "Thank you" too many times. By the time I hung up the peas were half melted and my cart looked like I'd been panic shopping for a blizzard. First day was the usual badge photo and paperwork gauntlet, except after lunch they slid me into a brainstorm like a replacement tire. The account was a regional healthcare group trying to build out their rehab wing's presence, stroke recovery, traumatic brain injuries, the works. The brief wanted hopeful, not saccharine. The room hummed with people throwing out ideas. Every time someone talked about simplicity my brain flashed back to the library study room and the way Amy's email unspooled like a moment where time finally made room for her. When it was my turn I said, "Could we make silence part of the message?" Heads tilted. I added, "Pace the voiceover like an actual person relearning it. Give space. Put the audience in the feeling of waiting and wanting them to finish, not to rush them." The creative director tapped her pen on her notebook, once, twice, and then grinned like she just recognized a melody. "Write it," she said. I did, with ellipses where a breath would live. The junior editor added captions that didn't race ahead. That night Amy called me just to play the sound of her campus email pinging, like a small bell. "Homework," she said, breathy and proud. She had to record 60 seconds introducing herself for her digital media class. She wanted it to sound like me but edited, which is how she phrased it, and asked if I knew any free software. I told her about Audacity and offered to walk her through it over the phone, but she said she learns better if she can point at things. We met at the same library because apparently my life now has a default backdrop of laminated floor maps and the smell of old paper. I brought the dorky little USB mic I use when Dave and I pretend our fantasy league matters enough for a podcast no one has ever heard. We set the levels low and the gain high and did 3 takes. In the first one you could hear my chair squeak every time I remembered a tip at the last second. In the second one she rushed and then laughed halfway through, which made us keep it for the laugh. In the third she slowed down exactly where she wanted, tapped the table twice to mark her own beat, and said her name like she was introducing someone she was happy to know. We cut that one together and she listened with her eyes closed, jaw tight like she was bracing for a wave. When it ended, she didn't talk right away. She held her hand over the speaker, like you cover a candle to make the flame stand still. On our way out, her aunt was waiting by the big potted plant near the entrance. The aunt waved at me like we were already on our second shared emergency and said she'd snagged a table next door if we wanted something warm. I was about to beg off, my brain was still chewing on the healthcare script, when the glass door swung open behind us and he walked in. Same man from the phone. Same press jacket. He moved like the room was something to be solved. He looked from me to Amy to the mic case in my hand. He didn't bother with hello. Amy, he said. You left your binder in the car. He held the purple binder up between two fingers. The aunt's hand slid to the small of Amy's back in a way that told me she'd rehearsed being a wall. Amy took the binder and, without waiting for him to start filling in the rest, lifted her phone. I want to show you, she said, slow and clear and stubborn. She put one earbud in his hand and the other in hers. He took it like it was evidence. The recording played. 60 seconds. Her name, not in the big voice, not pitched up or pushed out. A sentence about why she liked maps, they made the world feel held together. A pause where she let the air settle. A laugh that was partly the second take and partly right then. It wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary in the way breakthroughs are when you've been waiting for them long enough that when they arrive, you just nod. He didn't move the whole time. When it stopped he kept the earbud in like he was listening for a coda. He looked at the mic, at me, back at her. His face didn't do much. His hands did. They unclenched. Who edited this? He asked. She said, I did. He nodded once, cut his gaze to me, and said, thank you, like the words were packed in a too small box, and then he added, don't mistake that for permission, which I decided was as close to a peace offering as I was going to get. The aunt exhaled like she'd been holding up a ceiling. 2 days later, my new boss forwarded an email from my old company's HR with the subject line friendly reminder regarding post-employment obligations. It read like a smile with teeth. I sent it to Dave's cousin and went back to drafting the rehab piece with the editor. 10 minutes later the cousin replied with a 2-sentence note for my boss to keep on file, referencing the signed neutral letter and the no contact clause edit, and ended it with we'll assume this was sent in error. My boss wrote back handled and sent me a screenshot of him archiving the thread. I don't know that I've ever loved a rectangle of pixels as much as I love that. The healthcare team filmed a rough cut in a borrowed PT room with someone's dad in a hospital gown that still had the tag on it. They showed it to the client Friday in a fluorescent lit conference room that smelled like lemon cleaner and nerves. We were all sitting too straight. The voiceover did the thing we wanted, slow without pity, patient without condescension, and then there was this tiny pause where the actor caught his breath. The caption hung there for a heartbeat, and one of the physicians in the back row put her hand over her mouth and then nodded, once, like she just heard a language she didn't realize she missed. The client said, that, and pointed at the screen. The creative director was too cool to fist pump, but her pen did the tiniest victory tap you've ever heard. After, I went outside and leaned against a wall that had absorbed a week's worth of sunlight. My phone buzzed. Amy again. A photo of a classroom whiteboard with INTD 101 scrawled in the corner and a badly drawn dragon lurking behind the word syllabus. I made him, she said in a caption that took up my whole screen, and he looks like a lizard. But a confident lizard. She followed it with a voice note, my professor said my audio was considered. He asked if I could share how I made it. I said yes. You could hear paper rustle. You could hear a pen tap twice, her same little beat. There was one ugly bright thing that week. Someone in her class took a photo of her while she was dictating a question and slapped a dumb caption on it for their story, something about pressing 1 to speak to a human. She found out because a girl she'd met at orientation sent it to her privately with a hey, this is not okay. Amy forwarded the screenshot to me with a small, stubborn I'm telling the professor. She CC'd the disability office and her aunt. She didn't ask me what to do. She told me what she was doing. That felt like a bigger win than anything I've put on a resume. By the time I checked in that night, the professor had addressed it in class without naming names, the post was down, and the girl from orientation had asked if Amy wanted to sit with her next week. Amy sent me a string of dragon emojis and then one teacup. Sunday morning, I picked up groceries without needing to hold them like hand warmers and stopped myself from walking down the aisle where I almost quit on myself a week earlier. On the way home, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized and had to swallow something sharp to answer. It was him. No preamble again. She played me the whole thing, he said. The way she wrote the email. The class. I signed the thing because she put it in front of me and made me read it. He paused long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. I don't like how this started, he said, voice flat as a paperweight, but I'm not blind. Don't contact her at work, you understand me? I said yes. He cleared his throat like he was pulling a sentence out of a drawer that had been stuck for years. She sounds like her mother when she slows down, he said, and hung up. Monday, the agency sent out a short email. Client approved the concept, moving to production, kudos to the team. No party, no champagne. Just people swiveling in their chairs to tell each other, nice, and then typing again. I took my sandwich to the stoop because the sun was shaped exactly like an apology and I wanted to sit inside of it for 5 minutes. My phone buzzed with a photo from Amy. Campus ID, her face slightly too serious because the woman taking it told her not to smile, and directly below, student. Under that she'd added a caption, always alert. I wrote back, always. Then I put my phone in my pocket and went back inside to make sure the silence in our ad didn't get cut shorter in the final.